everyone. I'd like to, woo, that's right. All right, now my work is done. That's it, I can walk away. All right, I wanted to say a special thank you to everyone here today, our board, our staff, and our key project partners on this new facility for Haven. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to everyone watching at home. Everyone give a wave to the cameras over there. We're so excited to have everyone here today joining us. My name is Erica Ates Coyle. My pronouns are she, her, and I have the honor of serving as Haven's Executive Director. Before we begin today, I would like to offer a land acknowledgement written with the guidance of Dr. Jennifer Woodcock Medicine Horse. We feel it is essential to acknowledge, recognize, and offer respect to Indigenous people and specifically to those whose land we occupy. We acknowledge that we live, work, and recreate on the unceded territory of the Apsáalooke, Salish, Kasanka, Omskopi-Piikani, Tsetsistas, and Algaidika peoples. These peoples were and are the first stewards of the land on which we reside. Their communities have called this land home for more than 13,000 years. This formal acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic and personal relationships with Indigenous communities, but serves as a first step in honoring the land and peoples where Haven operates. Last year, of those who chose to share demographic information with Haven, 12.3% of the participants we had were Indigenous. Greater than 90% of assaults on Indigenous women and men are by non-Indigenous attackers. This is telling of the violence Indigenous people still experience today in Montana, in Bozeman, and across the Gallatin Valley. I am so grateful to be here today working with all of you in making this giant step forward in ending violence in our community. When I joined Haven in 2012, the organization was wrestling with the question of how could we simply meet the growing need for shelter in our community. As we dove further into this idea of a new building for Haven, we started to ask, how could we mobilize our community to really end violence and prevent it in the first place? Just as importantly, how could this new facility be a tool in making that shift happen? Our community had the answers for us. Survivors, partner organizations, donors, healthcare workers, educators, and so many others helped us reimagine what it meant to create a space that addresses not only the physical safety survivors need, but also the emotional and social safety. As I think back on all of the planning that went into this new project, the highlights for me will always be when survivors got to step into their own leadership roles. When survivors said, give us a space where we can be part of the solution in ending domestic violence. Give us a space where we can connect with not only other survivors, but our community as a whole. Give us a space that helps us live into our dignity. What Mass Design Group has created for us today is so much more than a shelter. It will be a place of respite, healing, and community. The many partners who put in long hours, thoughtful conversations, thoughtful feedback, and so much care into this process give me hope for our future. Next year, the ground we are standing on today, right here, will be the Barnard Center for Survivors. This center will make possible a more holistic approach in ending intimate partner violence. What we are doing today and what we will do in the years to come is standing as a community with survivors. To all the survivors watching this at home today, we are here with you. We lay a foundation today in honor of you. I would now like to welcome Jan Strout, one of Haven's founders, back in 1979. For those of you who might not know Jan, she continues to be a force to be reckoned with and a ceaseless activist dedicated to supporting Haven's work and all girls and women in the Gallatin Valley. Please join me now in welcoming Jan.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to make sure I can see this. And thank you for being here today to celebrate this moment in Haven's history. My name is Jan Strout, and I am one of the Feminist Collective co-founders from the 1979 Bozeman area Battered Women's Network, what is now Haven. Some of you may know me from co-leading a Bozeman for CEDAW Women's Human Rights Initiative. I am a survivor of gender-based violence, and along with our 15 co-founders, we wanted to create safety and protection for battered women in our community and to end the violence. I have been able to ask three others about their reasons and experiences with founding Haven. They include Lucille Pope, Emily Bear, and Donna Stringer, and have integrated their words here along with my own. In she says, sorry, the sun is a little bit challenging for me. But in 1979, a group of highly skilled and passionate community members came together to create choices for women with violence in their relationships, living with violence in their relationships. For the first 5 to 6 years, we were totally dependent on the 50 to 60 volunteers that kept our doors open. It's what can happen when the community says, "Not in our town," because so many women and male allies stepped up. We saw ourselves centered in the emerging feminist movement, whose analysis of why women and girls were being violated with rapes and beatings, child abuse, then later we named sexual and racial harassment, intimate partner violence, trafficking, and stalking, all on a continuum of violent behavior that was misogynist and deserved to be stopped and punished. We were successful in 1979 because, one, we stood on the shoulders of those who came before us, and two, because the community resources of the Help Center, police department, sheriff, individual physicians and attorneys, and the multitude of survivors and people who cared. It takes a community. None of us do it alone, and we hope that 40 years from now, those of you who stand here today will be able to celebrate progress in protecting communities from violence in ways that we may not even be able to imagine yet. Building a new resource required creativity, cooperation, everyone giving as much as we could, as best we could. It was a challenge and it was hard. From that group, determined to make a difference, came friendships and personal growth. Above all, we liked and respected each other. We joyfully celebrated our successes, what we knew. As the Bozeman Area Battered Women's Network began to develop and implement concrete measures to assist battered women, we continued to consider and adopt these measures according to new information that came from battered women and professionals working with them. Most of the women and families who sought out our services were white, many with low incomes and or student families, but not all. We did not have an anti-racist nor intersectional analysis back then, but we were approached and knew from MSU's family housing and the work of the Advanced by Choice program that some Native American women needed this protection and our resources. Our efforts were smaller then to address the diversity of women who were Indigenous, Black, international, or lesbians in abusive relationships. Our relationships with most services to the diversity of women were affiliated with the university, and so we utilized them and invited them to be a part of our training and to offer recommendations of how culturally appropriate support and services needed to be inclusive. What we learned. What we know now about violence and abuse in our culture is that it crosses all races, genders, economic, and social sectors of our society. While our movement has made great progress, this new home for Haven being a representation of that progress, our work is not done. You know that. To center survivors in all aspects of this work means understanding the connections between violence in the lives of women, people of color, and intersecting identities. It means reducing all the tools batterers use to control, including firearms, poverty, isolation, child custody, and bias in the criminal justice system, especially for women of color who remain the most invisible. We, as anti-racist, anti-violence feminist movement, and all of the Gallatin Valley must continue to advocate for equal rights and equity for all genders, indigenous and ethnic groups, and life-saving laws that keep firearms out of the hands of abusers. So what the new shelter, in conclusion, means to we co-founders. Just a moment ago, you heard from the amazing Erica, I love her, talk about how this facility is shifting ownership of the issue of domestic violence and interpersonal violence to the community. How appropriate that this new birth brings us back to our beginnings. As founding members of this organization who remember a time that even getting our community to acknowledge that domestic violence exists was happening was a massive challenge, that this shift is one that brings us hope. As longtime community organizers and educators, we have seen time and again the sustained change that can be brought about when we work together. In the 40 years hence, the volunteers who gave of ourselves to ensure the establishment of a safe and socially healthy shelter for battered women and their children can only hope that the efforts assisted in establishing the basis for this present highly successful shelter will be continued. Thank you so much for acknowledging these co-founders and all volunteers from decades ago. We are still here at your service and proud to be associated with the Haven and its new home. I would now like to turn it over to Haven's board president, Michelle Skinner, to say a few words, and thank you.
Let me see if I can get rid of all my extra accoutrements. Can everyone hear me if I speak this loud? Perfect, perfect. I am going to read a few things because, like Jan, this is pretty difficult to see on here, so I want to make sure I don't miss anyone. Jan, thank you so much for everything you've done for this community. We wouldn't be here without you. So we want to make sure we give her another round of applause. Thank you. Your vision was integral. As Jan mentioned, my name is Michelle Skinner. I use she, her pronouns, and I have the immense gratitude of being able to serve as the chairman of the board of Haven. We are so grateful to be here today. We're excited, we're hopeful, we just can't wait for what's next. Most of all, we would have loved to have celebrated with you, all of us online in person. But we just want to make sure that we keep everyone's safety in mind, and we're so grateful that you're listening online, and for those of you who are here in person, thank you. Over the past couple of years, I've had the privilege to get to know many of our wonderful partners and supporters of this project, as well as the staff and the board members who are involved in this work. I'm grateful to everyone involved, and I want to be sure that those who have poured their heart's work into this project are heard today. Here are thanks. First, thank you to Haven staff members. You're all over here. Thank you. You have influenced and guided the work of this shelter and the work that we do every day. Thank you for that work. I also want to be sure that we thank Megan Lochner. Without her organization today, this event would not have been possible. Thank you, Megan. Thank you to the board and the Capital Campaign Task Force who pour countless hours of their work and volunteer time to do this work for us. You are an asset to this work. Some key folks we want to make sure that we thank. JLF Architecture, thank you for leading this design competition. It was a generous donation. It grounded our organization in knowledge as a cornerstone of this process. Thank you, JLF. Thank you to Mass Architecture for your attention to detail, your expertise, your listening in designing this shelter. We're grateful to work with you, and we feel like you are a partner and a team member in this work. Thanks, Mass. To our project partners, Christy Tate at Tate Management and Kath Williams with Kath Williams and Associates, thank you for your expertise. And lastly, I want to thank the supporters who are with us today who made this new shelter possible. Wendy Wilson, Cindy Fonda, Mary Barnard, we're so sorry Tim couldn't join us, Shannon Engel. We also want to thank the other 382 donors who made this project possible. Thank you. I know I can speak for all of us on the staff and the board when we say we are so grateful for your partnership. Sophie, our development director, who everyone has to give Sophie a round of applause. We wouldn't be here without her, that's for sure. She's going to share a few words on behalf of Diana Blank, Tim Stevens, and the Candida Fund. They wanted to be here, but were unable to join us in person, so we appreciate Sophie's giving those words for us. Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you, Michelle, and to everyone here today. It has been an honor to work with the Haven staff, board, donors, and partners on this project. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to be part of this essential work. It's a privilege for me to share a few words on behalf of the Candida Fund. The Candida Fund applauds Haven for their community leadership and courageous work to empower survivors, hold abusers accountable, and stop the cycle of abuse. Haven's effort to promote equity, resiliency, and dignity, and the dignity of all individuals aligns closely with Candida's mission. This work is incredibly important right now. Today, as you gather to break ground, we are especially grateful to partner with Haven in the development and construction of this new shelter. I encourage everyone who is able to support this essential community project to do so. And now, I'd like to introduce Mary Barnard. Thank you, Mary and Shannon, for joining us here today and for your incredible generosity to the community. The Barnard Center for Survivors will transform the way our community approaches this work and empowers survivors.
I'm so not high tech, I had to write this out by hand. Thank you for having us here. Tim and I are just a small piece of the puzzle that will become this amazing achievement of yours. We find ourselves fortunate enough to help. But the real heroes are the people who will build this facility and those who will be helped by it. I know it's taken years of hard work by this dedicated group, and we congratulate you. I think my husband, who is a real speaker in the family, said it best. Our hope is that our gift will further enable to alleviate the suffering of the vulnerable while ultimately healing families in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you to all of our speakers today and for all of you gathering here with us. Now we get to finally do what we came here to do. So everyone grab your shovels, and I'm going to do a countdown. On the count of 3, let's dig in.
Get your hat.
All right.
Here, I'll go over here next to you.
It's perfect. All right. 1, 2, 3. Mary, you got there. You got a big one. Thank you all so much for being here today. We do have some refreshments on the table right over there, so please feel free to stay a while, chat. It's so good to see you all, and please help yourselves. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.